Good morning. This is Mark Bruno, Editor-in-Chief of the Cannata Report. It is Friday, which of course means we are here with Frank. But before we get started, I just want to remind everybody to please like, share, subscribe, comment. If you have any topics that you'd like us to consider for a future episode of Fridays with Frank, please shoot us a comment. So Frank, I understand this morning we have a recent retiree with us.
Well, soon to be retired. Well, I'm very pleased to have this gentleman join us this morning. We're all friends. I've always felt that of course, I'm talking about Barry Simon from Datamax, and welcome, Barry. We're just wrapping up the survey results for clients. You know, we do the analysis for them, how their dealers responded. And what jumped off the page for me was on the cause for concern, there was a preponderance of concern about one area. So I just selected one manufacturer just to give you a sense of what we're talking about, but it was fairly consistent. This one manufacturer had 77 dealers respond to the cause for what is giving him some sleepless nights, so to speak, cause for concern for the future. 26 out of 77 addressed the following. Let me just share with you what they said. Personnel, it's close to impossible to get a qualified worker in our area, no matter if it's sales, service, office staff, or whatever. Another, finding and hiring qualified staff, hiring sales, finding quality employers that are driven to achieve the growth, ownership, and management, and on and on and on. How have you dealt with this kind of challenge?
You know, Frank, one of the things that I've always kind of shared in our business is culture trumps everything. You know, I mean, it really does. And if you do the right things, people will want to be there. We've been fortunate in the company that I've had people with me for a long time. I mean, 40 years, some people 45, you know, with myself, maybe we have that stuff, and it's been longevity. Our shortest manager in Arkansas, I mean, and I'll speak for even in our company, is my son, and he's 10 years. Otherwise, you're dealing in managers that have been around 25 and 30 years. And it's about taking care of them. And really, I go back to the time when the pandemic hit, and I know some people talk about it. Right away, we made the decision that we weren't going to let anybody go. You know, I mean, it was just the right thing to do. So you can show that to people. And when people see that and your employees see that, they usually feel great about that stuff and they feel good about the company. I think sometimes people have let people go and they don't show that same stuff. And right now, more importantly, you got to meet with them. You got to talk with them. You got to do it. We talk about creating raving fans. We tried our hardest to get all of our employees from internally, you know, I mean, meaning that we want our own people to bring them in and talk and stuff. And that's been a plus. I do think it's a concern for some people because you got to realize right now, the only thing that people offer is money. You know, I mean, that's the first thing that they do. So, and a lot of people are looking at this and saying, well, you know, what do I need to do? And usually when I've always met with them, I bring them back and say, hey, you remember what transpired with us? I said, you know, you can't always think that. I mean, what happens if they all of a sudden make a change? And then the other thing that a lot of people are afraid of right now is artificial intelligence, AI, you know, I mean, and they're looking at how do they fit into that in that capacity. So my more importantly, for those dealers that are feeling that, I think you got to look at internally and making sure that you're doing all the right stuff. And that as a leader, you're communicating to them that you want to grow the company, you want to be here, and you want to see things. I think if you don't do that with your employees on a regular basis, there's going to be cause for concern.
It's interesting that you touched on the money because one of the other deals came up with this, being able to provide the appropriate compensation to retain good people while keeping competitive pricing for our clients.
You know, it's funny. If you stay consistent, and I think most importantly, stay consistent in what you're doing. And I think that's the part where some people, because you know, being competitive with your customers, you got to be. You know, I mean that's what we have to do. I don't always look at salaries as that's a part of it, but that's an equation. I think more importantly, if the people are happy working for you, that's the first measure. If they're not happy, then all the other stuff doesn't matter. And I think that person that's thinking that way, he may have some unhappy people because it's not all about the money. I mean, it's the same thing with customers. When you make it, people say, well, they're buying low price. They're only buying low price because they haven't perceived value in what you're bringing to them.
Basically, the concern is I can't generate enough money to really diversify. It's basically the way it comes across to me. In other words, the business, because of they do the typical and run through A4 taking away from A3 as an example. Loss of page count as another one, which decreases the revenue. So how do you deal with something like that?
Well, I'll start with the first one. A4 taking over A3. That's been going on for a while. I mean, it really has. In our company, we've obviously put out a lot of A4 products. I mean, it's a good percentage of it, and it was Lexmark, and we've had them in a lot of areas. And you can't stop that. What we've tried to, what not try to do, what we're doing is looking at what we call first time accounts. And we really look at everybody and say, okay, who are we not doing business with? And how do we get that business? What can we do to create that environment that lets these people want to talk to us? We have our marketing people putting stuff together that just say, hey, let us have a seat at the table just so we can talk and find out stuff that's going on. And as far as the page counts, I mean, if what's going on with that's true in a lot of cases. In some cases, it's not. But let's say that is happening. Then what you got to do is you got to find out being deeper and wider into that account. So diversifying, you have to in order to not lose that account to somebody else. And that's why we sell phone systems, we sell managed services, cybersecurity, and all the other things because we want to get deeper into that account. And that would be my first. But the biggest thing, you better go after first time accounts. I mean, and you can't do it. And at the same time, and that goes back to what I said earlier, don't forget your existing business. Don't lose that. Because too many times you spend so much and then all of a sudden somebody new is gone because your competitors are calling on those accounts just as they're calling on theirs. So
Sure.
you better make darn sure that you're in front of them. We do partnership reviews all the time. And it's not just necessarily going by, hey, here's your counts, here's your stuff. It's really finding out what the people want to do and what do they want out of technology and making sure that we're that provider and finding out what else do they need.